This is WCM's Park Update, a weekly show covering the outdoor hospitality industry, hosted by Ben Quiggle and Mike Gast. During each episode, you'll hear from special guests and campground experts on topics that will help your park flourish. WCM's Park Update is a production of Woodall's Campground magazine.
Hi, I'm Ben Quiggle, editor of Woodall's Campground magazine, and of course my esteemed colleague, Mike Gast,
Hi, everybody.
Former Vice President of Communications for Campgrounds of America. He's actually in Billings, Montana, where Campgrounds of America is based. And this is another episode of WCM's Park Update. Our guest this week is Cara Csizmadia, the new president of the Canadian Camping and RV Council. Brand new, what has it been, like a week or two?
Official start date was June 1st. So we're
all right. There you go.
And Cara,
So 5
Ben
days.
actually got the name right. Oh
He
my
did.
God!
I know.
Okay, mark that.
Yes.
I forgot to mention our sponsor is Bush Tech Adventures USA, which sells like canvas tents and other products for park owners. So I just wanted to give them a shout out real quick before we got too far into this. So they're a new sponsor, so I have to get used to saying the sponsors at the beginning of the show now. So, but it's exciting to have them along with us. And Cara, it's always exciting to talk with you. Obviously, we used to do a show together for a little over a year or so. And I got to know you a little bit through that, and then just the work you've been doing on the Canadian, with the Canadian Camping and RV Council. I did not know that you owned your park for that long. When I was reading your bio for the new role as president, I didn't realize you had owned your park for, it was almost like a dozen years, right?
It was a dozen years, yeah.
You don't seem to be that old. So you're like in your early 30s, right?
No, but thank you.
Yeah, I know. So it's just amazing. And give us a little bit of your background, I guess. How did you get into the park business to begin with?
Sure. Yeah. So I very unexpectedly kind of fell in our laps. So I actually, at the time that's all of that excitement happened to me, I was working, I was in school still. I was taking a business degree program, and I was also working in payroll and bookkeeping for a logistics company, as well as consulting for my mom owned a consulting firm at the time in oil and gas. So I was helping her on the administrative kind of payroll bookkeeping side there as well. So I was kind of doing a few things. I had recently gotten married. Life was kind of hectic and crazy. And then so my now ex-husband, his family had owned and operated the park since 1986.
Okay.
So they had a really great set of recurring guests and had a wonderful location close to the city of Calgary, and really relied on a lot of the big events, the Calgary Stampede and those kinds of things that happen in the summer there, as well as quite close proximity to Banff National Park, and those kinds of things. So they had great location and all of that stuff working really well for them. But we're looking to kind of start to transition into retirement. And at that time, initially needed help with their payroll and bookkeeping processing because they had some staffing changes. So initially, that's kind of how my involvement started. I started doing the payroll and bookkeeping for them. And then a year and a half or so in, it was kind of offered up to us in a very generous inheritance offer so that his grandparents could move forward with their retirement kind of planning. Okay. And then I'll be honest, initially I said no. I was like, I cannot deal with this. I was very daunted by the prospect of it. But with some thought and some acknowledgement for the, how rare it is to have access to an opportunity like that. We kind of dove in head first, and the rest was history after that. It was kind of a whirlwind the first couple years, especially transitioning into like leading a team of staff and finding my bearings in terms of, you know, a leadership role and guest services and all those things, as well as kind of diving into some of the stuff that park owners deal with that I maybe was less. I mean, I had never dealt with, having to clean a public bathroom before, and suddenly I had to do it every day. So those were some of the challenges. There was tons of positives too. I had small kids at the time. It really enabled us to keep them they always were with me. They were always around the park and really grew up there. And that was a huge benefit to us, and also provided us that seasonality that allowed me to really focus on motherhood and parenting them for like 6 months of the year, which at that time of my life was obviously a huge
So
priority.
how big was the park, Cara?
Yeah.
It was just under 200
That's pretty good
sites,
size.
188 sites. We did have a few kind of overflow spots. So at those peak times of the season, we were up around 210, depending on how we could Tetris everybody in there.
And so what was the
stampede
timeline of this? When was all this going on?
2007 was when I started there, and I left in 2019. And my ex-husband still owns and operates the park. It's still there and going. My kids are teenagers now, and both work there. They are professional lawnmowers and ice cream scoopers and all of those things. So it's obviously, it completely impacted our family and our lifestyle and all of that for sure.
I mean, it's just, I think Mike and I had a lady on, Amy Wirtz. We were talking about the family dynamic and how you pass things down. So it's really great to see that, you were able to kind of do that, pass it down to the next generation. I know that's really difficult for park owners. I don't know. Is that something that you hear a lot from park owners in Canada about, like, what that looks like if they pass it down to their kids and stuff?
It's getting less and less common, I think, to see it happening. I don't know if that's a generational thing. You're seeing kind of the next generation maybe not wanting to get into the business or wanting to go do something else for a while, and then they kind of end up down their own career path because of that, which is all reasonable stuff. But I think it is less and less common. We're definitely seeing it happen less and more often, seeing a sale and parks transitioning hands in that way.
So we're seeing a lot of longtime family-owned parks in the U.S. being scooped up by small corporations or emerging groups. Is that happening in Canada too?
Oh yes, absolutely. It's an interesting shift. I think, we're seeing some investment groups here in Alberta specifically. I know of a couple of them that have scooped up 3 or 4 parks really quickly, and are prioritizing maintaining that kind of small business, family operated kind of feel. And I'm excited to see how that looks and grows for them. I think there's a different level of challenges that happen in that dynamic. The level of kind of buy-in and real commitment to it is different when it's yours and you own it. And I joke all the time that the campground was like my third baby, because I really felt like I could nurture it and really impact how it grew and evolved. And I was proud of it. And, I don't think, it could be a challenge probably to find somebody on the staff side who has that level of kind of buy-in. I think it's possible. I know of some incredible campground operators out there who just kind of live and breathe it and all of that, but it can be a different dynamic. And those folks, those really passionate ones, can be tough to find. So when you start owning 5 and 6 and 10 parks, getting the right bodies in place I'm sure is.
So what's going on with the raw site numbers in Canada? I know down here we don't have anywhere near enough, and everybody seems like they're trying to expand and wedge them in wherever they can. Is that happening in Canada campgrounds too?
Absolutely, yeah. It's actually one of our advocacy positions that we presented in Ottawa this past April. We are really not even just at the federal level, but also provincially and municipally, uh, communicating with officials at all levels of government the serious lack of site inventory, the necessity for ideally the reduction in the amount of red tape and things required to get a project off the ground or do an expansion or addition onto an existing park. I just had a park last week. They spent 3 or 4 years trying to get their county to approve a rezoning from one land use type to the appropriate type so that they can build a park, and they were refused yet again. Those things are challenges that are echoed across the country, and between that and the kind of exorbitant costs related to development and those kinds of things, I think the correlation between the amount of RVs we've got on the road compared to how many sites are available, when you see those numbers compared with each other, it's quite obvious that we need a site inventory improvement across the board in almost every province. I think it's comes with its own level of challenges that at the government level, I empathize with them kind of having to balance those things out, but we do not have enough campsites in this country, and it is resulting in disenchantment with consumers who spend a lot of money to buy an RV and then can't get a site.
How about the post-pandemic traffic on U.S. campers? Are they back? Did they come across the border in a big way?
Yeah, we started to see that happen last year, but this year, 2023, we have zero restrictions, and so I think that is really going to support that traffic, the return of that traffic, in a big way. Last year, absolutely, we saw cross-border traffic really bolstering those areas of the country that really rely on it, and I think we'll see that continue to expand this year, which is fabulous news for us as we see, our domestic numbers kind of dropping a bit as folks can travel to other places far more easily again now. So we'll need that balance back. I think we're seeing a bit of a, that those 2021, 2022 numbers were so strong that, compared to those numbers, we maybe aren't, looking as strong reservations wise, but in comparison with 2019 and the years prior, we absolutely are in a great position. And I think that speaks to the site inventory conversation as well. We also are seeing finally the international guest market rise. So our European guests are coming back. All of our rental fleets are fully booked for 2023 already. So a ton of traffic coming back from Europe and those places too, which again is a great tourism market booster for us across the country.
What I know you guys were just in Ottawa. You guys, I know this week is Advocacy Week, sort of, for the RV and campground industries here in the U.S. But in Canada, you guys hit Ottawa in mid-April, I think it was. You were up there communicating with members of Parliament and different things. What was their reaction when you mentioned needing more like grants, investments, resources to help kind of push more site development, I guess?
Yeah, I think overall really positive. I think the majority of our officials are very supportive of continuing to grow economic activity in the tourism sector specifically. And so, positions are quite positive across the board with everyone I spoke to. We had, a couple of other advocacy positions that tend to take the driver's seat in those conversations because they've been lengthy. We've been advocating for some time, 7 or 8 years now, for change in the finance department's assessment. The Canada Revenue Agency has been reassessing campgrounds in some cases as specified investment businesses as opposed to small businesses, and so that it translates into a 3 times tax bill. So the tax rate for a specified investment business is 3 times the tax rate of a small business. And so it also eliminates access to small business deductions and all kinds of things that are money savers for our members. And their argument for that is that campgrounds are not active businesses. They're classifying those reassessed parks as passive businesses. And so we are strongly communicating the high level of activity that our park operators engage in every day of operating season. One of their parameters is that you have 5 full-time year-round employees, which, given the seasonal factor here, is often impossible for the majority of our members. They simply do not or cannot have 5 full-time year-round employees. So we're hoping to see some clarification and some classification changes in the Income Tax Act. Ideally, I think we may have to see some kind of a Band-Aid solution. But all of the feedback we're getting from officials on that is also very supportive. I think that is top of mind for operators across the board in Canada. Every time I speak to an operator about their primary concern, this is it, because they never know. You never know when the reassessment may come. So you're kind of always minding your P's and Q's and afraid to spend on an investment in your park or whatever in case you get a sudden, unexpected 3 times tax bill. And so it's really kind of this axe hanging over their heads. So that has remained the top priority in those communications. In terms of, like you asked, Ben, the development stuff, the challenge, I think, is there's kind of well, that's not my department, I don't deal with that. And so, getting to the right folks with the right motivation to really shift that is the priority. And we're working on doing those things better as well. We've always had a very strong federal advocacy strategy. We visit, like you said, visit Ottawa every year in April for RV Hill Day. So this year we actually had a couple of RVs parked out on Spark Street. We had food and all those things and invited all of those guys to come out and see the RVs, tour them, and hang out with our group. And we had kind of a photo op set up and all of that. So that was a great way to really engage with them. At the federal level, our strategy has been really strong for years. Provincially, our provincial associations, we've partnered with everyone to provide support wherever possible. A good example is the forest fires in both Alberta and Nova Scotia right now. Provincially, their governments are working closely with us and our provincial associations to communicate to members about, emergency response and supports and all those kinds of things. So those relationships are strong, and we've been able to communicate with those right individuals, I think, in a lot of those instances. Our big shift in strategy now is moving to the municipal level. We typically see really different varying treatment of parks, campgrounds, even in neighboring counties. And so to get to that municipal level and make sure that they're aware of the economic impact of campgrounds in their area, that I think it was Toby in our virtual conference this year mentioned $89 per night of spending in a local region per camper. That's huge economic impact to help those municipal officials understand that these parks are generating tons of activity in their counties, tons of tax dollar revenue, all of those things. So standing in the way of development is a concern. And limiting our ability to grow and continue to market park. In my campground, here's a great example. I had my county show up one day at my campground and tell me that I couldn't have a sign saying "Welcome to Mountain View Campground" out anymore. I had to take my signage down. So those are big challenges as an operator to face. How is anyone going to find me? How are we going to continue to be successful when things like that are happening to parks? So the strategy, getting down to that more micro level now, I think is going to also continue to really help on the development side.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, definitely. And I think that's some of the issues we face here in the US too. It does vary a lot by municipality. And I know it's important to know your local officials. We have to take a break, though, to recognize our sponsor, Bush Tech Adventures USA. And we will be right back with Cara in a minute.
No, ma'am. This is a 5-star establishment. We do not have tents.
Another one.
Another one.
With bespoke modern design, state-of-the-art craftsmanship, and only the finest quality materials, Bush Tech Safari manufactures tents that take luxury to the next level. A true combination of 5-star luxury and a 5 billion star experience.
Tents.
Better, best, Bush Tech.
Hi, welcome back to WCM's Park Update, sponsored by Bush Tech Adventure USA, and we are talking with Cara Csizmadia, the brand new president of the Canadian Camping and RV Council. And Cara, we were talking a little bit about some of the stuff you did for the advocacy efforts in Ottawa in April. And I guess, just getting back to your new role that you have with the association. I think you've worked with them since 2019. I guess when you first started with the association, did you think you were going to be president someday? Was that the plan? Or was this kind of like, they're like, wow, she's really good, so we have to keep her?
Well, yeah, the scenario was unexpected for me, I'll be very honest. So prior to working for the association, I was a campground owner and a board member. I was chair of the Alberta Association and represented Alberta's campgrounds at the national level and CCRVC's board of directors. And I had been there for a while. And so when I went to the next board meeting and had to step down, I think I had some champions in the room who were kind of like, this is a great opportunity to maybe see if she'd be willing to come work for us. She's got the experience, the industry awareness, can clearly empathize with members and understands the kind of challenges that operating a campground comes with and those kinds of things. So I pretty quickly was offered a position. No, I did not expect, certainly in those days, that this would get to this point. I think I do have a couple of champions even still around that table. And so, I'm grateful to them. And I have to say to Shane as well, Shane really stepped into the executive director role at CCRVC in kind of an unexpected way for him. He's been president at the Canadian RV Association on the manufacturer side for a long time and has so much experience with the association and great connections and relationships with his members. He was a clear and obvious good fit for the role, and so his gracious willingness to take that on top of everything else he was doing, I think was meant to be a little bit shorter term than it was, and so the transition has been probably kind of longer term in terms of him and I working together for the last 4 years. And I think he's a very passionate individual about this industry. He really connects with members and does such a great job in supporting them. Is so knowledgeable about on the government relations side and all of those things. I mean, these strategies, those advocacy positions I mentioned, that CRA stuff, that development stuff, all those things are completely in place because of the tireless efforts he's put behind that stuff. So I'm so grateful to have had these last few years to work with him, and also grateful for his support in transitioning me into this role. We'll continue to work together. Shane's not going anywhere, whether he wants to or not. He'll continue with the CCRVC team in the office there and provide support to members. He's also, kind of running the administrative side as executive director of Nova Scotia's Campground Owners Association, as well as the Atlantic Association. So he's got a lot of stuff on his plate, and we can't bear to let him go anywhere just yet. In addition to him still, steering the ship at CRVA. So he's actually in Washington. Him and Eleanor Ham are there, down there this week. I'm not sure. He may be heading home soon while we speak, maybe. But yeah, but they are there kind of representing our joint associations, and he's been a wonderful mentor for me. I cannot say enough about how supportive and valuable the experience has been. And I do really feel like he, earlier than me, had the kind of strategy in place to get us here where we are today.
So, Cara, what
I'm
is
grateful.
the climate in the dealer organizations in Canada and in the manufacturing side? I know we've seen a big slowdown here in the U.S. as far as the manufacturing goes. The dealers seem to be pretty well stocked in the U.S. Is it the same thing up in Canada?
Yeah, yes, we are seeing things kind of slow or correct after those couple years of roller coaster ride. I think I agree as well. Dealers are pretty stocked, and so shipments are slower than we're certainly used to seeing the last couple of years. We do have, we're seeing a big shift to kind of this service side on the dealers side. They're really focusing on those things in their strategies right now. I sit representing Alberta's Campgrounds on RVDA of Alberta's board, and they are doing some great work around re-strategizing their consumer RV shows in Edmonton and Calgary. Those will that's a strategy to really address the shift in those numbers and capture consumer attention in a way that is less, kind of sales driven. While that's still the goal, I think keeping consumers engaged in the lifestyle and all of that over this next bit is going to be a valuable strategy.
So we saw a lot of remote work happen down in the States when people had the opportunity to. A lot of folks bought RVs that never had them before and hit the road. Again, is that happening in the Canadian campgrounds too? And how has that changed the look of a campground and how an owner has to deal with a camper?
Yeah, no, we're definitely seeing that stuff. We're seeing also a big shift to kind of homeschooling families and things like that. That's opening up more kind of weekday traffic and things like that, which obviously is valuable. It's also expanding reservations into the shoulder, kind of what typically would be still the school year time, April, May, June, and then September, October-ish before it gets too cold up here. But those things, that weekday traffic, I think, is the biggest thing being impacted at this point. And then we're also seeing, parks are pretty motivated to expand on their kind of Wi-Fi service and those kinds of things because of that. I have several parks jumping on the Starlink plan and all of that. So, there's some challenges obviously with that. We have some pretty rural areas that have minimal service, and so those parks have to get creative about offering service to those guests. I think that has also kind of impacted in an interesting way. When everybody had to go to the office to go to work and only had the weekends, we kind of went to camp in the places that we were aware of and knew about. And now that we have a bit more time and flexibility, I think we're seeing folks get a little bit more adventurous and try a new park or go to a different region of their province or whatever that they haven't visited before because they have a bit more freedom. And so that's been an interesting outcome, I think, at this point as well.
So like on your advocacy front, I know you mentioned, there are more groups buying, investment groups buying these parks. I know of a couple in Canada. And I guess, on the advocacy front, do those groups help you on the advocacy front as well? Like having more of those investors and maybe they have larger money, I guess?
Yeah, I think it helps to have those big voices at the table for sure.
Yeah.
I think it's valuable to have them in the group. I think our best chance of equitable advocacy representation is as broad a range of voices as possible.
Yeah.
And so it's as valuable to me to have kind of the mom and pop 40 site park represented in the messaging as it is to have, whatever Adventure Capital Inc. and their 10 parks at the table. I do think, obviously, those folks have often, connections and relationships that, are valuable positives for us in terms of communicating our messaging and those kinds of things. It can be a tough thing to balance, that advocacy representation, and these different types of parks really do have different needs, and in some cases are direct competitors with each other. So there's a delicate and important balance, I think, to strike on that front, but we could not do it without those guys at the table. There's not a question in my mind that they are a necessity to continuing the advocacy communications.
I know one of the things we talk about a lot is EVs, and I know that was one of your other advocacy positions, getting more funding so that you can create an EV network. I know the U.S. is starting to do some of that. We do have a little bit of funding. I guess, what's that like? Are the park owners excited about opening up their parks to EVs potentially? Are they like, yay, we're going to have EV RVs maybe?
Yeah. There's, again, I think because we have such a broad demographic of operators and owners and all of that up here, there's varying degrees of feeling about it. I've heard everything on the spectrum at this point from members. I think the biggest kind of unifying position, regardless of if you're behind it and love it and want everybody to be driving an EV within 5 years, or if you're stoically against it, the unifying message that everyone agrees on is we do not have adequate electrical infrastructure in this country to support the level of demand that will be required for the amount of power draw that we're going to be expected to deliver if we install a comprehensive EV charging network. So regardless of how you feel about it, as things stand today, there's not enough infrastructure support. And so that's really our position, is let's not put the cart before the horse or the horse before the cart. Let's reasonably and logically address this and start from the ground up. Let's start working on infrastructure improvements that can support this level of drop. We do already have the federal government does have an EV installation grant program, and they are offering it to campgrounds. We do have campgrounds who've applied for this grant and are working with contractors and suppliers and the federal government to start installing level 1 and level 2 chargers within their parks. That stuff is happening. We do have some operators who are serious forward thinkers who feel very strongly that this is the thing and that they need to get rolling on this, and they are doing it. And some are doing, are very successful with it. And I think campgrounds are obviously very uniquely positioned to support an EV charging network, given how kind of spread out around the country we are. We're often in more rural areas that serve as kind of an area of congregation, and traffic converges there and those kinds of things. It makes sense to me for the government to continue to support those projects with grant funding and things like that. Our challenge still remains infrastructure support. If in the midst of July, I have 200 sites all running their AC and their fridge and their microwave and everything else, adding a couple electric vehicles on top of that is potentially very problematic. And so we need to be thinking about the process in a reasonable step 1, step 2, step 3 phased way, in my opinion. And that's really what we're advocating for.
And I think, it's even more than that. Like down here by like 2035, the all new vehicles are, a lot of them are going to be EV. And so you're not just talking like 1 or 2 EVs either. You're talking like potentially dozens of sites. And then if you get the ERVs in there, which I don't even know what those look like yet, but that would be pretty crazy. I know down here, my utility company was like, you've got to turn off your AC units during the hottest part of the day because we can't handle the load. So,
well, and I think the first wave of that's going to be, the smaller, the Tesla type vehicles that are taking advantage of the glamping craze. They're going to be going up and experiencing accommodations on campgrounds, and they're just showing up with electric cars that they're expecting to be able to charge.
100% agree. It's happening already.
Yeah. Well, I think that's all the time we have today, Cara. I just want to, it was great catching up with you.
Yeah,
hopefully the weather's getting nicer up there.
It's stunning.
That's great. Yeah. And hopefully the role, is summer a busier time for CCRVC, or is it a slower time for you guys?
Things tend to slow down a bit in the office in the summer, as all of our members are quite busy, kind of focused on the task at hand. It does give us the chance to kind of catch up on some strategy stuff for the year and tidy up any kind of lingering tasks and things like that. So we stay busy in the office, but the level of kind of demand and travel for our team is
well, feel free to quit sending the smoke our way. I think all the way down to Omaha, Nebraska, we've been feeling it all year, and I'm afraid that they got off to such an early start that when you guys are starting to put them out, we'll start our fire season in the western states too, and it's just it's becoming just an annual thing.
Yeah,
it's been a tough, challenging spring already, and I do have concerns. I live in Alberta and love this province, and I definitely have concerns about how this summer is going to look, given that it's the beginning of June and we've already spent weeks kind of in the battle. So we'll see. I'm hopeful that things continue to improve the way they have been the last 10 days or so.
Unfortunately, I think even on like the news cycle front, the news people have kind of gotten used to the fires, so they don't, it's not quite as big as it used to be. Like, I think even like 6-7 years ago, they would have been like, whoa, look at all the, now they're just kind of like, it's another fire. So that's unfortunate too, to some degree. So
it is a challenge.
Yeah. Well, it was great talking with you, Cara. And thanks for giving us an update. I hope the new position continues to go well, and I'm sure we will catch up down the road. So
absolutely. I look forward to it. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone, for watching, and thanks again to our sponsor, Bush Tech Adventure USA, and we will see everyone next week.
Thank you for listening to WCM's Park Update, a production of Woodall's Campground magazine. Join us for a new show each Tuesday at 3 p.m. Eastern on Facebook, YouTube, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Follow us on Facebook and LinkedIn for daily news and updates, and subscribe to our news feed on our website at woodallscm.com. Show hosts are Ben Quiggle and Mike Gast. Executive producers Rick Kessler and Alex Burkett. Copyright 2022, G&G Media Group.